Humanity's secret dreadnought loomed in the void, a behemoth bristling with guns, while the Iridians mocked and jeered at the broken human in the bar, not knowing their species' doom sailed on neutronium-armored wings. Randy Crawford, a grizzled war veteran, sat alone in a dingy dive on the Iridian homeworld. The bar's reptilian patrons gave him a wide berth, shooting looks of disdain and revulsion at the lone human. Randy overheard a group of Iridians loudly deriding humanity, calling humans the galaxy's clowns and those moronic Terrans. They guffawed about how the Iridian battle fleet obliterated a human colony the previous week, crowing that the humans barely put up a fight. Randy's hands slowly clenched into fists, but outwardly he didn't react, staring fixedly into his drink. The raucous group's loud-mouthed leader, a hulking Iridian brute named Murloc, swaggered over on stumpy legs. He deliberately knocked Randy's glass over, spilling the human's drink across his own lap. Murloc sneered down, needle teeth glinting. "Oops, didn't see you there, little human," Murloc rasped. As the Iridian's reeking spittle flecked his face, Randy slowly stood, locking his gaze with Murloc's red eyes. The towering alien laughed, a harsh bark. "What are you going to do, Terran? Cry for your mummy? Maybe beg for mercy like your pathetic species always does?" Moving lightning quick, Randy smashed his forehead into Murloc's face, crunching the Iridian's flat nose. Murloc staggered back, acidic blood spraying from his nostrils. Snarling with pure rage, Randy tackled Murloc, taking the massive alien to the ground. The other Iridian surged forward, pummeling Randy viciously before hurling his limp form out into the street. His head struck the filthy pavement with a sickening crack. As Randy struggled to his knees, bloody drool hanging in strands from his mouth, Murloc loomed over him. The Iridian leaned down, fetid breath hissing from his lipless maw. "You just signed your death warrant, Terran scum," Murloc spat. "I will personally eradicate your whole craven species. Your severed head will decorate my command chair." Randy hawked a spray of blood and bits of broken teeth onto Murloc's feet. He extended a shaking middle finger. "My species kept a little surprise secret, just for shit-stains like you," Randy slurred. "You're gonna learn that you reptile pricks fucked with the wrong race." As he spoke, far overhead, a behemoth slipped out from behind the Iridian moon. Bristling with continent-killing guns and clad in neutronium, the titanic human warship engaged its engines, powering towards the planet's unsuspecting defense fleet. Blackness swam at the edges of Randy's vision. He dragged the back of his hand across his mouth, smearing blood on his cheek. With a pained grunt, he pushed himself to his feet, staggering forward a few steps before catching himself on a wall. He tapped his watch, bringing it close to his face. "Contingency Alpha 09er, he muttered. "I say again, Alpha 09er. The watch crackled to life. "Alpha 09er confirmed. Backup inbound. ETA 15 minutes. Randy spat a glob of blood onto the pavement, his features twisting into a grimace. Murloc's threat echoed in his head, stoking the flames of his rage higher. He pushed off the wall, limping heavily as he made his way down the street. Pain lanced through his body with every lurching step, but he pressed on. The Iridian military HQ loomed ahead, a brutalist monstrosity of jagged angles and dull metal. As Randy approached, klaxons began to wail. Armored Iridians poured from the building's maw, plasma rifles clutched in their claws. Hissing a curse, Randy ducked into a narrow alley between two towering structures. His fingers fumbled at his pocket, finally fishing out a small disc. He slapped it against the alley wall. The device hummed, the air in front of it shimmering like a heat haze. Randy took a deep breath, then stepped forward into the distortion. The cloaking field wrapped around him, and he vanished from sight. Inside the cavernous atrium of the Iridian military HQ, Murloc stalked back and forth, his tail lashing. "Find that Terran filth," he roared at a cluster of subordinates. "I want his head on a pike." Suddenly the lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Shouts of confusion and alarm rang out, Iridians barking orders. A brilliant flash erupted in the center of the room. A small sphere skidded across the floor, then detonated in a searing burst of plasma. The closest Iridians were vaporized instantly, their ashes drifting in the air. Screams filled the air as Randy appeared in the midst of the chaos, a rifle in each hand. The glow of the plasma cast his blood-streaked face in hellish light. His eyes blazed with fury as he opened fire, plasma bolts stitching through the ranks of Iridian soldiers. Randy's plasma rifles bucked in his grip, spitting blazing bolts of energy that ripped into the Iridian ranks. The stench of charred flesh filled the air as dozens of the hulking reptilians were reduced to smoldering husks. But for every soldier Randy cut down, 3 more surged forward to take their place, hissing and snarling. The tide of bodies crashed into Randy, their weight bearing him to the floor. Clawed hands tore at him, drawing blood. Randy snarled, smashing the butt of his rifle into a Iridian face, pulping it. But there were too many, and he vanished beneath the writhing mass, pinned to the floor. Murloc loomed over the struggling human, a vicious sneer on his face. "Did you really think you stood a chance, human?" he crowed, drawing back a stumpy leg and slamming his foot into Randy's ribs. Randy felt something crack, agony lancing through him. "Your species is weak, pathetic. We are the Iridian Empire. We are Invinci." The building convulsed violently, cutting off Murloc's gloating. The floor rolled and pitched like a ship in a storm, throwing Iridians from their feet. Shouts of confusion and alarm filled the room. Murloc staggered to a shattered window, peering out. His jaw dropped, eyes bulging in their sockets. "Impossible," he breathed. Outside, blotting out the sun, hovered a behemoth of a warship. It dwarfed the largest Iridian Dreadnought by a factor of 20. Sharp and angular, it bristled with enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble. "We had no intelligence, no indication the humans possessed anything like this," Murloc whispered, his voice trembling. As if in response, a bone-shaking boom rolled over the city. A web of crimson light stabbed down from the Dreadnought's underside, instantly atomizing a mile-wide swath of cityscape. The beams began to sweep back and forth with cold precision, methodically scouring the city from the face of the planet. Randy pushed himself up on shaking arms, blood running into his eyes. He thumbed open a comm channel. "This is Chief Petty Officer Crawford. I am in the Iridian Central Command HQ, requesting precision strike on my position. Danger close." He bared his teeth in a feral grin. "Give 'em hell, boys." Murloc spun, his face a mask of fear and fury. He snatched for his sidearm, but Randy just smiled. An incandescent lance of energy speared down from the human ship, and the world vanished in a maelstrom of fire. A titanic blast wave ripped through the Iridian military headquarters, the Dreadnought's precision strike vaporizing the top half of the building in an instant. Massive chunks of rubble hurtled through the air, the shockwave hurling Randy backwards. He crashed through a wall, tumbling end over end before slamming to a bone-jarring halt. His ears rang, vision swimming. Incredibly, he was still alive, shielded from the worst of the blast by the Iridian corpses piled around him. Randy hauled himself upright, coughing on the choking dust that clouded the air. He squinted through the haze of smoke and pulverized concrete, watching the Dreadnought's lasers scythe across the city, systematically leveling every structure. The air shimmered with heat from their passage. Iridian soldiers fled in terror as the beams incinerated everything they touched. The city dissolved into fiery chaos, buildings crumbling, the streets choked with rubble and ash. Suddenly the lasers ceased firing. The Dreadnought hung motionless in the air. For a moment an eerie silence fell over the ruined city. Then a small hatch opened on the Dreadnought's underside. A swarm of shapes poured out, rapidly resolving into dozens of drop pods as they plummeted towards the surface. The pods smashed down onto the ruined streets in rapid succession, impact craters cratering the rubble. With a hiss of hydraulics, the pods' hatches swung open. Armored human figures came pouring out, heavy boots pounding on the ferrocrete as they fanned out through the ruins. One pod landed directly in front of Randy with a crash. The hatch blew open, and a hulking bear of a man strode out, powered armor whirring and clanking. His matte black carapace made him look more tank than human. A stenciled Sigma logo stood out on his breastplate. "Chief Crawford?" The trooper's voice crackled with electronic distortion as he stomped up to Randy. "Sergeant Vasquez, Sigma unit. Your ride's here, sir. Let's get you the hell off this rock." Randy pushed himself to his feet, his whole body one giant ache. He clasped Vasquez's armored forearm. "Damn good to see you, Sergeant. I hope you boys left some for me." Vasquez's bark of laughter rang hollowly from his helmet speakers. "Plenty of reptile to go around, Chief." Vasquez unslung a wicked-looking plasma rifle from his back and held it out to Randy. "Locked and loaded. What do you say we go bag some scale?" Randy took the rifle, the weapon's weight comforting in his hands. He flashed a feral, blood-streaked grin. "I thought you'd never ask." Randy fell into step beside Vasquez as they strode into the smoke-wreathed ruins, the Sigma unit fanning out around them. The Dreadnought's lasers stabbed down again in the distance, the city's death throes painting the sky crimson. Randy nodded curtly, falling into step beside Vasquez as the Sigma unit fanned out, securing the area. The soldiers moved with ruthless efficiency, plasma rifles snapping up to put down the few surviving Iridians stupid enough to offer resistance. Charred corpses hit the rubble-strewn ground, the air reeking of ozone and cooked flesh. Vasquez picked his way through the shattered wreckage of the Iridian military HQ, his armored boots crunching on pulverized concrete and twisted metal. He paused, kicking over a slab of ferrocrete to reveal Murlock's crushed body. The once proud Iridian commander was barely recognizable, his features pulped, acidic blood pooling beneath his mangled form. "Looks like you really stirred up the hornet's nest, Chief," Vasquez remarked, his helmet speakers crackling. "High Command's been planning this op for months. That stunt you pulled in the bar was the perfect excuse to put it into action ahead of schedule." Randy shrugged, then winced as the motion pulled at his injuries, fresh blood oozing through his tattered clothing. "Couldn't just sit there and let them badmouth us, Terran pride and all that." The soldiers hastened to comply, trotting off to their assigned tasks with crisp salutes. But before they could disperse, a swirling vortex of azure light suddenly snapped into existence in the center of the ruined courtyard. Randy and Vasquez whirled, weapons snapping up to train on the anomaly. A figure materialized from the glowing portal, and as the light faded, it resolved into a Iridian. But this one was clad in ornate robes of shimmering silk, not military garb. The alien raised its long-fingered hands in a placating gesture, glittering eyes fixed on the battle-ready humans. "Price, Terrans," it intoned in a resonant voice that echoed inside their minds without passing through their ears. "I am Kelthar, High Chancellor of the Iridian Ascendancy. I have come to parley." Vasquez's plasma rifle thrummed with deadly intent, its muzzle unwavering, as he sighted down the barrel at the Iridian Chancellor. His finger hovered over the trigger, every muscle tensed and ready to paint the rubble with Kelthar's viscera. "Give me one good reason not to ventilate you right here, Xeno scum," Vasquez snarled, his voice dripping with venom. The servos in his armor whined as his grip tightened on the rifle. Kelthar regarded the enraged human with an almost preternatural calm, seemingly unconcerned by the dozen weapons trained on him. His glittering eyes flicked from Vasquez to Randy, then back again. "You have made your point most effectively, Terrans," Kelthar said, his telepathic voice tinged with a weary sort of respect. "Your vaunted Dreadnought has laid waste to our capital in a matter of minutes. Countless lives have been lost. You have us at your mercy." The Chancellor spread his slender hands wide, the ornate silk of his robes shimmering in the harsh light. "I have come to offer our unconditional surrender, to prevent further bloodshed. The Iridian Ascendancy will submit to human rule, if you will spare what remains of our people and civilization." Randy stepped forward, ignoring Vasquez's warning growl. He planted himself squarely in front of Kelthar, close enough to feel the alien's cool breath on his face. His eyes were hard, his features carved from stone. "Pretty words, Chancellor," Randy said coldly. "But your kind has been butchering humans for decades without a shred of mercy. Why should we believe you now? What's to stop you from stabbing us in the back the moment we lower our guard?" Kelthar bowed his head, his shoulders slumping as if under a great weight. "Nothing save my word as High Chancellor. I cannot change the past, but I can strive to build a better future, one where Iridians and humans live in peace as equals." The alien looked up, locking eyes with Randy. His gaze was ancient and unfathomable, holding a depth of sorrow and weariness that transcended species. "I am tired of war, Terran, tired of seeing my people suffer and die. I will do whatever is necessary to end this conflict, even if it means surrendering our very freedom." Kelthar extended a slender hand, his long fingers uncurling, palm upturned in a universal gesture of supplication. "Please, let us begin anew." Randy hesitated, his jaw working. Suspicion warred with the aching, desperate need to end the decades-long cycle of bloodshed. How many more had to die before it was enough? Slowly, grudgingly, Randy reached out. His battle-scarred hand hovered over Kelthar's for a long moment, then clasped it firmly. The Iridian's skin was cool and dry, his grip strong. "I hope for both our sakes that you're telling the truth, Chancellor," Randy ground out. "Because if you're not—" He let the unspoken threat hang in the air between them. Kelthar inclined his head. "I understand, Terran. You have my solemn vow. The Iridian Ascendancy will honor this surrender, come what may." Vasquez made a disgusted noise, his rifle still trained unwaveringly on the Chancellor's head. "I don't like this, Chief. It stinks like a trap." Randy released Kelthar's hand and stepped back, his eyes never leaving the alien's face. "Maybe, but it's a chance for peace, a real one." He glanced at Vasquez. "Signal the fleet. Tell them to stand down. We're done here." Vasquez hesitated, clearly torn. Then, with a muttered curse, he lowered his rifle and touched a hand to his helmet, opening a comm channel. "All units, this is Sigma-1. Stand down. I say again, stand down. The Iridians have surrendered. We are disengaging." Confirmation signals flooded in from the Sigma unit and the orbiting Dreadnought. Slowly, warily, the human soldiers lowered their weapons, eyeing the Iridians with open suspicion. Randy turned back to Kelthar. "All right, Chancellor, you've bought your people a reprieve, but know this, humanity will be watching. Closely. Any hint of treachery, any sign that you're reneging on your word and we'll be back, and we won't be nearly as merciful the second time around." Kelthar bowed deeply. "I would expect nothing less, Terran. You have my gratitude and the gratitude of the Iridian people. We will not squander this opportunity." The Chancellor straightened, his robes swirling around him. "Now there is much to be done. We must begin the process of integrating our peoples, of finding a way to coexist peacefully. It will not be easy, but I believe it can be done. With your permission, I will return to my people and begin making the necessary arrangements." Randy nodded curtly. "Do it, but remember, we'll be watching." Kelthar inclined his head in acknowledgement. Then, with a gesture, he opened another swirling portal. With a final, inscrutable look at the humans, the Iridian Chancellor stepped through and vanished, the vortex snapping shut behind him with a crackle of energy. Randy let out a long, slow breath, suddenly feeling every ache and pain from the day's battles. He turned to Vasquez, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "I hope you know what you're doing, Chief," the sergeant said quietly. "Trusting a Xenos, it goes against everything we've ever been taught." Randy sighed, running a hand through his blood-matted hair. "I know, Sarge, but sometimes the only way to end a war is to be the first one to lay down your gun. Maybe it's naive, but I have to believe there's a chance for something better than all this." He gestured at the ruined cityscape, the still smoldering craters left by the Dreadnought's guns. Vasquez grunted, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "Maybe. I hope you're right for all our sakes, but if you're wrong, then we'd better be ready for one hell of a fight." Randy clapped the sergeant on his armored shoulder. "If it comes to that, we will be, but for now, let's go home." The two battle-weary soldiers picked their way through the rubble towards the waiting evac shuttles, the Terran Dreadnought looming watchfully in the skies above. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of war. Only time would tell if that hope would flourish, or be snuffed out like so many before it. But for now, it was enough. The evac shuttle's engines roared to life as the Sigma unit boarded, the small craft lifting off in clouds of dust and debris. They angled up towards the Dreadnought's waiting hangar bay, leaving the ruined Iridian city behind. Randy watched through a viewport as the shuttles slotted neatly into their docking clamps, the hangar doors sealing shut behind them with a resounding clang. He felt the Dreadnought's mighty engines rumble to life, the deck thrumming beneath his feet. Slowly, ponderously, the behemoth turned in space, its prow aligning with the distant gleam of Sol. With a flare of its titanic thrusters, the Dreadnought leapt forward, accelerating rapidly as it left Iridian space behind, the ravaged world dwindling to a mottled marble, then a speck, then nothing at all. Kelthar's long fingers curl around Randy's hand, the alien skin cool and dry. "You have my solemn oath, Terran," the Chancellor says, inclining his head. "I will not rest until—" Suddenly the Iridian stiffens, his eyes flying wide. He staggers back, a smoking hole punched clean through his chest, vivid green blood splattering the rubble. Randy whirls, reaching for his sidearm, as a second shot cracks out, catching the Chancellor in the throat. Kelthar crumples, hands scrabbling weakly at his neck, choking on his own blood. "Sniper!" Vasquez bellows, dragging Randy into cover behind a shattered pillar. "Southwest corner, third floor." The Sigma soldiers unleash a blistering hail of return fire, plasma bolts screeching through the air and stitching across the ruined facade of a nearby building. Chips of stone and clouds of dust erupt from the pockmarked wall as the fusillade rips into it. There is a strangled scream and a flurry of movement as a figure tumbles from a shattered window and plummets to the street below with a sickening crunch. "Cease fire!" Vasquez barks, rising from cover and advancing cautiously on the crumpled form, weapon at the ready. He prods the corpse with his boot, rolling it over to reveal a Iridian clad in the distinctive black fatigues of the Ascendancy's Covert Ops Division. The sniper's rifle lies a few feet away, its barrel still smoking. Vasquez crouches beside him, expression grim behind his visor. "This is going to get ugly, Chief. When word spreads that we assassinated the High Chancellor, the Iridians will go apeshit. We need to get off-world before they regroup and counterattack." As if on cue, the throaty roar of engines fills the air as a squadron of Terran dropships descend from the clouds, banking hard and touching down in the courtyard. Gouts of dust billow out from beneath their thrusters as they settle to the ground, rear ramps slamming down. "Saved by the bell," Randy mutters, pushing himself to his feet with a grimace. His battered body protests the movement, a litany of aches and pains making themselves known. "Let's get the hell out of here, Sergeant. We just kicked the hornet's nest big time, and I don't want to be around when the swarm arrives." He limps towards the waiting dropships, Vasquez falling into step beside him. The Sigma soldiers form a protective cordon around them, weapons scanning for threats as they move across the rubble-strewn ground. In the distance, the first angry wails of Iridian sirens begin to fill the air, a rising cacophony of alarm. They reach the dropships and scramble aboard, the rear ramps slamming shut behind them. Randy collapses into a seat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He can feel the exhaustion settling into his bones, the adrenaline that had sustained him thus far beginning to ebb. The dropships lift off with a roar, rising swiftly into the sky. Randy watches through a grimy porthole as the ruined cityscape falls away beneath them, the glittering spires of the Iridian capital receding into the distance. "Hell of a day, Chief," Vasquez says, settling into the seat across from him. The sergeant pulls off his helmet, revealing a face streaked with sweat and grime. Randy nods wearily. "And it's just getting started. That sniper may have just single-handedly reignited the war." Randy grits his teeth as the G-forces slam him back into the crash seat, the straps digging into his shoulders. The dropship's engines scream as the pilot hauls back on the stick, wrenching the craft into a steep climb. Alarms wail, bathing the troop bay in strobing red light. The Sigma soldiers brace against the bulkheads, weapons clutched tight. The pilot's voice crackles over the comm, tight with tension. "Overlord, this is Viper 1. We have the package and our RTB. ETA to rendezvous with the Odysseus, 15 mics." "Roger, Viper 1, comes the reply, distorted by static. "Be advised, long-range scanners are picking up multiple inbound signatures, vectoring in on your position, coming in hot from planetary north. Looks like the Iridians are out for blood. Copy, Overlord. The pilot acknowledges grimly. We'll put the pedal to the metal, Viper 1 out. Suddenly the dropship lurches violently, throwing the occupants against their restraints. Proximity alarms shriek as the scanner feed lights up with a swarm of hostile contacts, closing fast. Shit! The co-pilot yells, hands flying across his console. They're everywhere, fighters, attack drones, SAM batteries. I'm reading hundreds of them. The deck bucks wildly as the pilot throws the dropship into evasive maneuvers, chaff and flares spraying from its dispensers in glittering clouds. The troop bay rings with the deafening clatter of shrapnel pinging off the hull as a storm of anti-aircraft fire brackets the craft. Pop smoke, the pilot barks. Deploying countermeasures, hang on back there, this is going to get rough. Missiles streak past, the searing heat of their passage washing over the viewports. The dropship heaves and shudders as near misses detonate all around it, pummeling the fuselage. They're swarming us, the co-pilot shouts over the cacophony, his face awash in warning lights. We can't shake them, we need backup now. As if in answer, a shadow falls across the beleaguered dropship. The sun blotted out by a gargantuan black hull. The kilometre-long bulk of the Dreadnought Odysseus thunders overhead, swarms of fighters pouring from its cavernous bays. The Terran fighters fall upon the Iridians in a storm of plasma fire, tearing glowing holes in their formations. Attack craft vanish in blossoming fireballs as the dropship hurtles through the maelstrom, the escorting fighters closing ranks around it. The Odysseus's point defences fill the sky with pulsing webs of laser fire, swatting Iridian ordnance from the air. The dropship screams into the hangar, slamming down onto the deck with a bone-rattling impact. It skids and spins across the armoured plating, trailing smoke and sparks before shuddering to a halt. The troop bay doors blow open, and the Sigma soldiers come piling out, weapons at the ready. Randy and Vasquez emerge last, the chief leaning heavily on the sergeant, his face grey with pain and exhaustion. The hangar is a hive of activity, damage control teams swarming over the strike craft. An imposing figure in a white admiral's uniform strides through the chaos, flanked by stone-faced Marines. The soldiers snap to attention, boots crashing down in unison. Chief Petty Officer Crawford, the admiral says, halting before Randy, eyes like chips of blue ice. Well done. Thanks to your actions, the Iridian ascendancy is in chaos, their leadership decapitated, their military in disarray. He clasps his hands behind his back. But our victory has come at a high price. The Iridians will never forget this day, never forgive. They will stop at nothing to avenge their fallen chancellor. The admiral fixes Randy with a piercing stare. I hope you're ready, Chief. From this day forth you have a target on your back. The Iridians will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. They will not rest until you are dead. Or they are. Randy meets the admiral's steely gaze head-on, his own eyes hard as flint. With all due respect, sir, he grinds out, voice ragged with fatigue, the Iridians brought this shitstorm down on themselves. They've been butchering our people for decades while we fought with one hand tied behind our backs. It's high time we take the fight to them. The admiral gives a curt nod, a flicker of approval in his icy blue eyes. Agreed, Chief, that's why I'm reassigning you to Task Force Vanguard. You'll be the tip of the spear for our counter-offensive against the Iridians. He turns to Vasquez. Sergeant, you and your men are with him. I need my top dogs on this. The admiral returns the salute. I have no doubt, Sergeant. Get your asses to the armory and gear up. Dust off in 30. As the admiral turns on his heel and strides off, Vasquez looks to Randy, a feral grin splitting his craggy face. Back in the suck, eh, Chief? Just like old times. Despite himself, Randy feels his own lips twitch into a smile. The first genuine one in what feels like years. Wouldn't want it any other way, Sarge. Let's go bag some lizards. The scene cuts to the Odysseus's massive armory, a cavernous space packed with racks upon racks of gleaming weapons and armor. Randy and the Sigma team are a flurry of activity, gearing up for the coming fight. Randy steps into a heavy combat exosuit, the powered servos whirring and clicking as they sync with his movements. He reaches up and pulls a plasma rifle from the rack, the weapon thrumming with barely restrained energy as he slots it into the suit's shoulder hard point. Beside him, Vasquez slides a bandolier of grenades over his shoulder, the deadly spheres clacking together. He turns to face the assembled soldiers, his gravelly voice booming off the metal walls. "Listen up, shit-kickers," he barks. "We're punching deep into Iridian turf. They'll be gunning for our asses with everything they've got, but we're the baddest motherfuckers in the galaxy. We're gonna take the fight to their doorstep and show 'em what happens when you fuck with the Terran Union." The soldiers roar in response, a primal battle cry as they smash their fists against their chest plates with a resounding clang. Randy feels a surge of adrenaline, hot and fierce, the old familiar thrill of impending violence. This is what he was built for. Not politics or diplomacy, but the pure, visceral rush of combat. The armory hatch hisses open, and the Admiral strides in, a cadre of officers in tow. The soldiers snap to rigid attention, boot heels cracking against the deck. "At ease," the Admiral says, coming to a halt in the center of the room. He clasps his hands at the small of his back, his weathered face grave. "I won't sugarcoat it. We're outnumbered and outgunned. The Iridians are pissed as hell and they'll fight like cornered rats. But we've got something they don't." He pauses, piercing eyes sweeping the room. "We've got the stones to do whatever it takes to defend our people. The lizards think they can break us, that they can make us tuck tail and run. They're dead fucking wrong. We're the Terran Union. We don't bend. We don't break. We fight." The soldiers let loose a savage cheer, a sound to make the very bulkheads quake. The Admiral allows himself a tight, predatory smile. Randy gives his rifle one last check, the weapon eager and ready in his hands. He looks up and meets Vasquez's eyes. The sergeant gives him a firm nod, an unspoken promise passing between them. The time for talk is done. The only thing left is to bring the pain to the Iridians' door, to make them bleed for every human life they've stolen, to show them the terrible cost of rousing humanity's wrath. Randy pounds a gauntleted fist against his chest plate, the clang as loud as a war drum. The dropship shudders violently as it plunges through the Iridian atmosphere, the hull glowing cherry red from the searing friction. Inside, Randy braces himself against the bulkhead, the deck vibrating beneath his boots like a jackhammer. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot barks over the comm, his voice tight with tension. "Get ready to hit the ground running." Randy takes a deep breath of the stale metallic air filtering through his helmet. He checks his plasma rifle one last time, the weapon thrumming with lethal potential in his grip. The dropship screams over the jagged Iridian landscape, the terrain a hellish blur of razor-sharp obsidian spires and roiling magma fields. Suddenly, the ship bucks wildly, alarms screeching in Randy's ears. "We're taking fire," the pilot yells, stress fracturing his voice. "Sam's coming in hot." The dropship swerves and jinks erratically, chaff and flares spraying from its dispensers in a desperate bid to confuse the incoming missiles. But it's too little, too late. A SAM slams into the dropship's flank with a deafening boom, blowing a gaping, jagged hole in the fuselage. The ship lurches drunkenly, belching smoke and flame like a wounded beast. "We're hit," the pilot shouts, wrestling with the controls as he struggles to keep the crippled craft airborne. "Losing altitude fast. Brace for impact." Randy grabs onto a handhold, his knuckles white beneath his armored gloves, as the dropship screams towards the unforgiving ground, trailing fire and wreckage like a comet. The ship hits hard, skidding and bouncing across the uneven terrain, the shriek of tortured metal filling the air. Randy is slammed against his restraints with bone-jarring force, the breath exploding from his lungs. After what feels like an eternity, the dropship skids to a smoking halt, reduced to a twisted, smouldering wreck. Randy shakes his head to clear the ringing in his ears, then punches the release on his harness and staggers to his feet, his exosuit whining in protest. "Sound off!" he barks, his voice hoarse and ragged. "Who's still breathing?" One by one the soldiers report in, their voices strained with pain but alive. Miraculously, it seems they all survived the crash, if just barely. Randy stumbles to the gaping wound in the fuselage and peers out at the forbidding Iridian hellscape. Jagged spires of obsidian claw at the smoke-choked sky, magma seething and bubbling in the cracks. Even through his climate-controlled armor, Randy can feel the searing heat, the temperature easily topping 100 degrees. "Overlord, this is Vanguard 1, Randy says, keying his comm. "We've been shot down. Repeat, we've been shot down, requesting immediate extraction." The comm crackles with static, the signal weak and distorted. "Negative, Vanguard 1, comes the reply, the voice distant and strained. "All available assets are engaged. You'll have to make your own way to the objective. Sending coordinates now. Godspeed. Overlord out." Randy grits his teeth until his jaw aches, frustration and anger warring in his gut. But there's no time for recriminations. They have a mission to complete. "You heard the man," he growls, turning to face his battered but unbroken squad. "We're on our own, but that's nothing new for us. We're Sigma. We're the best of the best, and we've got a job to do." He brings up a flickering holographic map of the area. The objective, a pulsing red dot on the horizon. "The Iridian command bunker is 50 clicks north of here," he says, steel in his voice. "That's where we'll find their leader, the one they call the Overseer. We take him out. We throw their whole damn war effort into chaos." Vasquez steps forward, his armor scorched and dented, but his eyes alight with fierce determination. "We're with you, Chief," he rumbles, his voice a low growl, "to the end." The others nod in grim agreement, readying their weapons with the clack and whine of charging plasma. Randy feels a fierce surge of pride and loyalty for these soldiers, his brothers in arms. They've been through hell together and come out the other side, tempered like steel in the flames. "Then let's move out," he barks, his voice hard as granite. "We've got a long march ahead of us, and the Iridians will be hunting us every step of the way. But we're going to show them what happens when you corner a wolf. We're going to make them regret the day they ever fucked with humanity." With that, the warriors of Sigma set out across the blasted Iridian hellscape, the distant objective shimmering on the horizon like a mirage, the merciless heat rippling the air around their battle-scarred armor. They are bloodied and battered, but unbroken. They are the tip of the spear, the best of the best. They are Sigma. The obsidian crunches beneath their boots as they force march across the unforgiving terrain, the bubbling magma fields casting a hellish red glow across their angular armor. The heat is oppressive, a physical weight bearing down on them, but they push on with grim determination, unwilling to yield an inch to the hostile alien world. Randy takes point, his enhanced senses probing the jagged landscape for any sign of threat. His plasma rifle is held at the ready, the weapon eager for blood. Behind him, the rest of the squad fans, out in a staggered formation, watching each other's backs like a pack of wolves. Vasquez falls in beside Randy, his weathered face set in a scowl of concentration. "I don't like this, Chief," he mutters, his voice low and tense. "This place is too damn quiet. Where are the Iridians? They should be swarming us by now." Randy nods grimly, his eyes never stopping their restless scan of the hostile terrain. "They're out there," he growls. "Watching, waiting. They'll make their move soon enough." No sooner have the words left his mouth than a shrill, ululating war cry splits the air, echoing off the jagged cliffs. Randy's head snaps up, his eyes narrowing. "Contact," he barks, his voice like a whip crack. 12 o'clock high, range 400 meters. A horde of Iridian warriors pours over the ridge ahead, their reptilian bodies clad in angular black armor, their fanged maws stretched wide in bloodthirsty roars. They brandish wicked-looking plasma rifles and serrated blades, their eyes gleaming with malice. "Light 'em up," Randy orders, his voice cold and hard as he sights down his rifle at the charging horde. "Weapons free. Show them what Sigma's made of, boys." The air fills with the lethal hum of charging plasma as the soldiers open fire, the air rippling with heat haze from the searing blasts. Iridians stumble and fall, blown apart in sprays of hissing green ichor, but still more come, scrambling over the bodies of their fallen comrades, heedless of the withering fire. A plasma bolt sizzles past Randy's head, close enough to scorch his armor. He grits his teeth and puts a burst into the offending Iridian's chest, blowing the creature off its feet in a spray of steaming viscera. The Iridians close with frightening speed, bounding across the uneven terrain on powerful clawed legs. They're nearly on top of the humans now, their shrieks of bloodlust filling the air. "Fix bayonets," Randy roars, the snap hiss of his own blade locking into place punctuating his words. Time to show these bastards what it means to fight up close and personal. With a collective roar, the soldiers of Sigma surge forward to meet the alien tide, the searing crackle of plasma fire giving way to the meaty thunk and crunch of close-quarters combat. A Iridian warrior looms up before Randy, its serrated blade hissing through the air. He sidesteps the blow and drives his bayonet up under the creature's chin, the razor-sharp blade punching through the roof of its mouth and into its brain. The Iridian convulses, acidic blood spraying from its jaws, then slumps to the ground, twitching. All around, the soldiers of Sigma are locked in desperate, brutal combat with the Iridian horde. Vasquez wrenches his blade free from Iridian's chest, his armor splashed with steaming ichor. Another alien leaps at him, screeching, but he meets it head-on, smashing his armored fist into its jaw with a sickening crunch. The soldiers push on through the hellish Iridian landscape, jagged obsidian crags towering on all sides, magma seething and bubbling in the crevasses. The heat is oppressive, a physical weight bearing down on them, but they don't slow, the servos in their exosuits whining with the strain of each step. Suddenly a shout crackles over the calm, laced with tension. "Contact, 11 o'clock, range 200 meters. Randy is already moving, dropping to one knee and bringing his plasma rifle to bear in one smooth motion. He sees them then, a squad of Iridian soldiers cresting a ridge ahead, their chitinous armor glinting in the harsh, ruddy light. "Open fire," Randy barks, his voice like a whip crack. The air comes alive with the vicious crackle of plasma bolts as the Sigma soldiers unleash a blistering fusillade. The Iridians return fire immediately, sizzling beams of energy streaking past the humans' positions. One shot finds its mark, and the soldier next to Randy goes down with a cry, a smoking hole punched clean through his chest plate, the edges glowing molten. Randy grits his teeth, blinking away the sweat stinging his eyes, and keeps firing, his plasma rifle humming with barely restrained power as it spits bolt after bolt at the advancing Iridians. The aliens are tough bastards, their armor absorbing the brunt of the plasma bolt's fury, but they're not invincible. One by one they start to fall, chitin cracking and shattering under the relentless barrage, ichor spraying. But for every Iridian that drops, it seems like two more surge forward to take their place. They come swarming over the ridge, a chittering, howling mass of claws and mandibles, plasma rifles spitting death. The Sigma soldiers obey instantly, bounding back by turns, one squad always laying down a suppressing fire as the next falls back. They move with the smooth, drilled precision of elite warriors, even as plasma bolts crack and sizzle around them. They fall back to a narrow defile, towering walls of obsidian rising on either side like the jaws of some great beast. It's a natural choke point, and Randy knows it's their best chance to stem the Iridian tide. "Hold this line," he orders, taking up position at the mouth of the defile, his rifle leveled and ready. "Not one damn bug gets through, you hear me?" His soldiers take up firing positions on either side, hunkering down behind boulders and outcroppings, sighting down their rifles at the approaching horde. The Iridians surge forward, heedless of their losses. Driven by a fanatical, almost suicidal fury, they hurl themselves at the human lines, screeching and gibbering, claws scrabbling at the unyielding stone. The Sigma soldiers meet them with a wall of plasma fire, the air shimmering and dancing with the heat of their weapons' discharge. Iridians drop and thrash, blown apart by the fusillade, but still they come on, trampling the dead beneath their clawed feet. The defile works to the humans' advantage, funneling the aliens into a killing zone, where the Sigma soldiers' interlocking fields of fire cut them down in droves. Piles of Iridian dead soon choke the mouth of the canyon, the stones slick with ichor. But the Iridians are relentless, throwing themselves forward with a single-minded ferocity, uncaring of their own lives, determined to rip and tear until their last breath. For a moment, It looks like the line will hold, that the human firepower and the advantageous terrain will win the day. The Iridians start to falter, their advance slowing as they clamber over the mounds of their own dead. Then, with a deafening, grating roar, a hulking brute of a Iridian warrior bursts through the faltering ranks of its lesser kin. It is a towering mass of chitin and sinew, nearly twice the height of a man, its armor a gleaming, impenetrable fortress of layered plates. In its claws it hefts a huge, wicked-looking glaive, the blade a crackling, seething bar of barely contained energy. The weapon hums and throbs with power, glowing a baleful red in the murky half-light. The warrior charges forward, energy glaive held high, plasma bolts spattering off its armor like hailstones off a roof. It shrugs off the human's fire with contemptuous ease, closing the distance with terrifying speed for something so large. With a single sweep of its glaive, it cuts a bloody swathe through the human lines, soldiers falling before it like wheat before a scythe. Men scream as the crackling blade shears through armor and bone alike, bodies and limbs sent flying. In moments, the mouth of the defile is littered with sundered human corpses, the stones awash with blood. Randy sees the juggernaut coming, carving a path of carnage through his soldiers. He knows that if it isn't stopped, if it breaks through the line, the entire squad is doomed. There's no time to think, no time for tactics or strategy. There is only the simple, primal need to act, to protect his men, his brothers. Randy leaps from cover, a wordless battle cry tearing from his throat, plasma rifle blazing on full auto as he charges headlong at the Iridian warrior. The monster turns to face him, its four compound eyes glinting with cruel intelligence, mandibles clacking in what could almost be a mocking laugh. It brings its glaive to bear, the blade humming with violent energy as it prepares to swat this impudent human aside. Randy doesn't hesitate, doesn't slow. He hurls himself forward in a flying leap, ducking under the whistling sweep of the glaive's crackling blade. He crashes into the Iridian with all the force his exosuit-enhanced strength can muster, slamming into its armored thorax like a human battering ram. The impact is titanic, the crack of chitin against alloy ringing out like a thunderclap. Warrior and human go down in a thrashing tangle of limbs, grappling and rolling across the blood-slick stone. The Iridian is immensely strong, its exoskeleton hard as tank armor, and it has four clawed limbs to Randy's too. But the human is driven by a desperate fury, a primal rage born of the need to protect his men, and it lends him a ferocious strength. They wrestle and heave, neither able to gain the advantage, locked in a brutal stalemate. The Iridian's claws gouge into Randy's armor, rending alloy, seeking his flesh, as his gauntleted hands scrabble for purchase on its slick, chitinous hide. Randy's gaze falls on the fallen energy glaive, the weapon lying just out of reach, still thrumming with lethal power. With a howl of effort, he throws himself sideways, one hand outstretched, fingers straining. They close around the glaive's haft, the weapon's power field stinging his palm even through his armored glove. The Iridian realizes his intent a second too late, mandibles widening in a screech of rage as it tries to bring its bulk to bear, to pin him. But Randy is already moving. With a roar of defiance and desperate strength, he rips the glaive free and reverses his grip, driving the crackling blade down with all his might. The glaive's tip punches through the Iridian's armored thorax like an armor piercing round through paper, the alien's chitinous plating no match for the weapon's raging energy field. The warrior convulses as the blade sinks deep, impaling it, ichor spurting from the wound in a pressurized gout. Then, with a final shudder, the light fades from its compound eyes and it topples backwards, crashing to the blood-soaked stone in a clatter of armor plates, dead. Randy stands over the fallen alien, the glaive humming and pulsing in his grip, his chest heaving with exertion. He looks to his squad, sees them staring at him in stunned awe, the tide of Iridians faltering in the face of the warrior's fall. "That's how it's done," Randy growls, his voice rough with exhaustion and barely restrained rage. He raises the glaive, the crackling blade sizzling as alien blood evaporates off its searing edge. "You want to fight, you alien bastards? We'll give you a goddamn fight." The Sigma soldiers roar in answer, a primal battle cry of defiance and renewed fury, and surge forward to meet the Iridian horde anew. Plasma rifles bark and crack, felling aliens left and right, the line holding strong. They fight with the strength of desperation, the ferocity of cornered wolves determined to sell their lives dearly, and with Randy at their head, a one-man army bludgeoning Iridians aside with the hissing, spitting glaive, they start to push forward, yard by blood-soaked yard. The Iridians waver in the face of this furious counterattack, their resolve cracking. The humans press their advantage, plasma bolts and crackling glaive reaping a terrible toll, alien bodies piling high. With a final, ululating wail of defeat, the Iridians break and run, scuttling back over the ridge in full rout, leaving their dead and wounded behind. The Sigma soldiers let out a ragged cheer, thrusting their fists into the air in triumph, even as they slump with exhaustion. Randy plants the butt of the glaive on the ground, leaning heavily on the humming weapon, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looks out over the sea of broken Iridian bodies, the stones black with ichor, and feels a grim satisfaction. "Good work," he says, turning to his soldiers, his voice a hoarse rasp. "Damn good work, all of you, but we're not done yet. We've still got a mission to complete." He straightens, ignoring the screaming protests of his battered body, and gestures with the glaive towards the distant horizon, where the spire of the Iridian command bunker looms like a jagged dagger thrust into the sky. "That's our target," he says, his voice hardening with resolve. "That's where we'll find the head of the snake, and we're going to cut it off." The soldiers nod grimly, reloading and checking their weapons, tending to their wounds with quick efficiency. They fall in behind Randy as he starts forward once more, his steps heavy but determined. They are bloodied and battered, their armor scorched and rent, but they are unbroken. They are Sigma, humanity's finest warriors. And they will not fail, not now, not ever. The Iridians will learn this, even if it's the last thing they ever learn. Ursunke. The obsidian crags rise before the soldiers, like the jaws of some primordial beast as they emerge from the ravine, the Iridian command bunker looming atop the jagged rock, like a malevolent fortress of black metal and bristling gun emplacements. Randy holds up a fist, and the squad crouches behind an outcropping, the basalt still warm from the magma churning far below. He surveys the approach to the bunker through narrowed eyes, taking in the heavily armed patrols of Iridian warriors, marching before the layered blast doors, their chitinous armor glinting in the ruddy light. The bunker squats like a bloated insect, its armored hide bristling with plasma cannons and missile batteries. "All right, listen up," Randy says, his voice a low rasp over the squadcom channel. "Vasquez, take Fire Team Bravo and swing wide to the west. Draw their fire, keep them occupied and away from the doors. The rest of us will infiltrate the bunker and take out that comms array." Vasquez nods, his craggy face grim behind his visor. "Got it, Chief. We'll give these bugs a show they won't soon forget." He turns to the soldiers crouched behind him. "You heard the man, let's give 'em hell." With a wordless battle cry, Vasquez and his team surge from cover, plasma rifles spitting blue-white bolts of ravening energy. They charge straight at the Iridian lines, their exosuits eating up the ground with loping strides. The Iridians respond instantly, a keening wail rising from their ranks. Gun emplacements swivel and hum with building charge, locking onto the charging humans. Searing lances of energy stab out with eye-watering brightness, the beams slashing through the air, their passage leaving ripples of superheated atmosphere in their wake. Vasquez and his team juke and weave, their exosuits careening and jetting as they throw themselves into wild evasive maneuvers. Plasma bolts crack and sizzle around them, the Iridians laying down a withering hail of suppressive fire. One of the humans catches a bolt to the chest, the searing lance punching through his armor in a spray of molten ceramite and flash-boiled blood. He goes down hard, tumbling and rolling across the uneven ground. Randy grits his teeth as the soldier's vitals flatline on his HUD, but there's no time to mourn. Vasquez and his team are buying them precious seconds, drawing the Iridians' fire, and he won't let their sacrifice be in vain. "Move," he hisses over the comm, and the rest of the squad is instantly in motion, darting from boulder to scree slope, keeping low and fast. Their exosuits muffles their steps, reactive camouflage shimmering and flowing to match the basalt and obsidian. They reach the bunker wall, pressing their backs to the cool metal. Randy runs an armored hand over the surface, feeling for any weaknesses, any imperfections they can exploit. There, a hairline seam almost invisible to the naked eye. He raps it with a knuckle, listens to the hollow echo. An access panel, maybe a maintenance hatch. The squad edges away, hugging the wall, weapons trained on the hatch. Randy holds up 3 fingers, counts down. 3, 2, 1. The charge detonates with a muffled whump, the shaped blast warping the metal, blowing the hatch inward on shredded hinges. Smoke and dust billow out, briefly obscuring the dark maw of the opening. Randy is moving before the debris even finishes settling, storming through the breach, rifle up and sweeping. The squad is hot on his heels, fanning out to secure the room beyond. It's a dimly lit maintenance bay, all exposed piping and flickering status screens. The deck thrums beneath their boots, vibrating with the immense energies channeled through the bunker's hidden reactors and capacitor banks. "Move," Randy says, his voice tight with coiled tension. "The command center is 3 levels down." They push forward into a labyrinthine warren of twisting corridors and stairwells, the layout confusing and disorienting by design. But the schematics overlay on their HUDs keeps them oriented, a glowing thread leading them down, ever down, into the armored heart of the facility. Suddenly a klaxon begins to blare, the wailing alarm echoing through the metal halls. Strobing red emergency lights bathe the corridors in a pulsing, bloody glow. "They've made us," Corporal Hicks calls out, his voice ragged with adrenaline. "We got incoming." They round a corner and run straight into a Iridian kill team, the hulking aliens lying in ambush. Plasma bolts fill the air, flensing armor and searing flesh. Men scream, Iridians screech. The corridor becomes a charnel house of scorched metal and burned meat. Randy leads from the front, storming through the chaos, his rifle bucking and flaring. He puts a burst into a Iridian's faceplate, blows its head apart in a welter of shattered chitin and ichor. But for every alien he guns down, 3 more surge forward, pouring from adjoining passages, a chittering tide of claws and fangs and hate-filled compound eyes. The humans fall back by squads, laying down a blistering barrage of covering fire as they leapfrog down the corridor. The deck grows slick with blood and viscera, both human and Iridian. The air reeks of ozone and cooked flesh. "There!" Randy shouts, gesturing with his rifle at a massively armored blast door at the end of the hall. "The comms center. Pour it on. Buy me time to get this door open." Randy slaps a breaching charge on the door's locking mechanism, thumbs the detonator. The screen flashes red, the bomb wailing. The door blows inward with a tremendous gout of smoke and flame. The Sigma team piles through, rifles sweeping, finding themselves in a vast hemispherical vault. Towering banks of computers and comms equipment line the walls, indicator lights winking and pulsing. Hollow screens flicker with real-time tactical data. And in the center of it all, reclining in a throne-like command chair, is a massive Iridian clad in ornate armor of shimmering, iridescent chitin. Its eyes are orbs of liquid hate as it rises to its full height, drawing itself up imperiously. "Fools!" it hisses, voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can defeat the Ascendancy? We are infinite, we are eternal. Your primitive species will be crushed beneath our heel." Randy steps forward, bringing his rifle to bear on the alien warlord's head. "Not today, we won't." He squeezes the trigger. The rifle barks, bucking against his shoulder. The bolt takes the Iridian right between its primary eyes. Its head snaps back, exploding in a geyser of ichor and brain matter. The massive body topples, falling across the command throne with a clang of armor on metal. The light fades from its remaining eyes, limbs twitching spasmodically. Randy turns to his team, gesturing to the comms arrays with his rifle barrel. "Demo charges on the master control nodes. Burn this obscenity to the ground." The soldiers move with the efficiency of long practice, planting satchel charges at key junctures throughout the room. The bombs beep and whine as they arm, their timers a glaring countdown. They fall back to the door, taking up defensive positions. The Iridians are howling beyond the threshold, hurling themselves at the opening in a frenzied wave. "Fire in the hole!" Randy yells, his thumb hovering over the detonator's trigger. "Frag out!" The charges blow with a roar like the ending of worlds, the explosion instantly consuming the vast room in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. The overpressure hurls the humans back, slamming them against the far wall. Flames gout from the door, the Iridians caught in the blast flailing and shrieking as they burn. The bunker rings like a struck gong, the lights flickering and dying as the power is cut. The Sigma team pours out of the smoking ruin of the command center, storming back up through the labyrinth of corridors and stairwells. They emerge into the ruddy light of the Iridian day, blinking against the sudden glare. Vasquez and his battered team are waiting at the rendezvous point, their weapons trained on the bunker's smoldering entry wound. They whoop and holler as Randy and the others come pounding up, a ragged cheer going up from the soot-stained survivors. "Knew you bastards would make it," Vasquez calls out, thumping Randy on his armored shoulder. "Never doubted for a second." Randy grins, the expression made feral by the blood and grime coating his face. "The comms array is scrap. The warlord is paste. We gave him a righteous kick in the teeth." As if on cue, a flight of Terran dropships come screaming over the ridgeline, their heavy cannons hammering a blistering barrage at the disorganized Iridian forces still milling around the devastated bunker. The aliens wail and scatter, caught out in the open, crumpling under the hail of shells and shrapnel. The dropships flare and hover, settling around the Sigma team in a protective cordon. Ramps slam down, black-armored Marines pouring out to secure the perimeter. Randy and his soldiers stumble aboard, slumping into the crash couches, their weapons clattering to the deck as the adrenaline begins to fade, exhaustion taking hold. As the dropships lift off, clawing for the safety of low orbit, Randy looks out the view slit, watching the bunker recede, now just a plume of greasy black smoke staining the sky. "We did it," he breathes, hardly daring to believe it. "We struck a blow against the ascendancy today, showed them they're not invincible." Vasquez nods, his jaw set in a hard line. "Aye, we bloodied their snouts, but this war is far from over. They'll be back, and in greater numbers. We've got a long fight ahead of us." Randy leans back, feeling the rumble of the engines through the hull, a palpable reminder of humanity's strength, their indomitable will to survive, to triumph. "Damn right we do. But we'll win, Vasquez. For the sake of our species, for the fallen, we have to win, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. The ascendancy will learn the true meaning of human defiance. We'll take this fight to their very heart, and we will prevail." The Terran ships claw for the stars, carrying their cargo of battered but unbroken warriors, each of them a living exemplar of humanity's unconquerable spirit. The war rages on, a conflagration consuming worlds, but the soldiers of Sigma know neither doubt nor fear. They are the best of the best, the tip of the spear, and they will not fail, cannot fail. The Odysseus's hangar bay is a scene of controlled chaos as the dropships carrying the battered Sigma soldiers settle to the deck with a clang of metal on metal. The ramps slam down, and the soldiers come limping out, their armor scorched and rent, the tang of ozone and burnt metal sharp in the air. Medics and technicians swarm forward, their faces tight with concern as they take in the soldiers' injuries. Portable scanners whir and click as they assess the damage, triage protocols already scrolling across their display visors. "Chief Crawford? Sergeant Vasquez?" A young ensign pushes through the milling crowd, his face pinched with urgency. "The Admiral needs you on the bridge immediately." Randy exchanges a glance with Vasquez, seeing his own exhaustion and grim determination mirrored in the sergeant's eyes. They follow the ensign through the Odysseus's winding corridors, the ship's battle-scarred bulkheads telling the tale of the bitter fight against the Iridians. The bridge is a hive of activity, officers hunched over consoles, their faces lit by the glow of tactical displays, The Admiral stands at the center of the controlled maelstrom, his weathered face carved in lines of grim resolve. Chief Crawford, Sergeant Vasquez. The Admiral's voice is rough with fatigue, but there's a note of pride in it as he takes in the soldiers' battered but unbowed forms. Well done out there. Your actions have struck a major blow against the Iridians. He gestures to the massive holographic star map, dominating the bridge's main display. The sprawling web of the galaxy's arms slowly rotating. But I'm afraid our job is far from over. The Admiral taps a command and the map zooms in, focusing on a seething knot of angry red icons massed in a single star system. Intelligence reports that the Iridians are gathering a massive fleet in the Caraxes system. All indications are that they're preparing for a major offensive, a strike at the very heart of human space. Randy steps forward, his eyes hard as flint as he takes in the display. Earth, he says flatly, his voice tight with dread. They're going after Earth. The Admiral nods grimly. It's the only target that makes sense. Decapitate our government, shatter our resolve. He meets Randy's gaze, his own eyes like chips of blue steel. We cannot let that happen, Chief. Vasquez grunts, his scarred face twisting. Easier said than done. The Caraxes system is one of the most heavily fortified Iridian strongholds. They'll be expecting an attack. The Admiral's mouth thins to a hard line. Indeed, a frontal assault would be suicide. His fingers dance across the console, the star map shifting and zooming once more. But there may be another way. A small, unremarkable world pulses into focus, a tiny mote orbiting on the fringe of the Caraxes system. This is KX-4872. On the surface it seems insignificant, just another barren rock, but our scans have detected something more. The display shimmers, resolving into a topographical map of the planet's surface, angry red icons massed across its rugged terrain. There's a major concentration of Iridian ground forces here, along with what appears to be a central command nexus. Vasquez's brow furrows, confusion and suspicion warring on his craggy features. Why the hell would they put a command post on some backwater dirtball? The Admiral's face is grim, his eyes hard. We believe they're using KX-4872 as a staging ground, a hidden marshalling point for their invasion force. Crack that command center, and we could throw their entire offensive into disarray. Randy nods, the tactical gears turning in his head. A precision strike. Get in fast and hard, take out the command nexus before they even know what hit them. Exactly. The Admiral's gaze bores into the two soldiers, his voice low and intense. It won't be easy. The Iridians will have that rock locked down tight. We need a small team, the best of the best, to infiltrate their defenses and eliminate that command center. He leans forward, his eyes never leaving Randy's. I want Sigma on this, Chief. You're the finest soldiers humanity has to offer. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. Randy comes to attention, his back ramrod straight, his eyes alight with a fierce, unshakable resolve. We'll get it done, sir. No matter the cost, we'll get it done. Randy takes the slate, his eyes already scanning the data, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. When do we deploy, sir? Immediately. The Admiral's face is carved from granite, his voice hard as steel. The Iridians are already marshalling their forces. Every minute counts. Get your squad prepped and ready, Chief. The clock's ticking. Randy and Vasquez snap to attention, their boots crashing down on the deck plates in perfect unison. Sir, yes, sir. The soldiers of Sigma assemble in the Odysseus's armory, a cavernous space filled with the tools of war. They move with the tight, economical precision of veterans as they gear up, checking and double-checking their weapons and equipment. There's a grim, coiled tension in the air, a palpable sense of the monumental task before them. They all know the stakes, know that the fate of their species hangs in the balance. But there is no fear in their eyes, no hesitation in their movements. Only a steely, unflinching resolve. Randy and Vasquez move among them, offering words of encouragement, clasping shoulders and forearms in silent gestures of support. These are more than just soldiers, more than a squad. They are a brotherhood, forged in the crucible of countless battles, bound by ties thicker than blood. As the final checks are completed, the soldiers fall into formation, their armor a patchwork of scorches and scars, their weapons thrumming with barely restrained power. They are Sigma, the best of the best, and they stand ready to face the crucible once more. For the sake of their species, for the sake of all they hold dear, they will not falter. They will not fail. They will fight to the last, no matter the odds. The soldiers of Sigma move through the Odysseus's armory with practiced efficiency, each knowing their role, each focused on the mission ahead. The clack and clatter of weapons being checked and loaded fills the air, punctuated by the snap and hiss of armor seals engaging. Randy stands before them, his battle-scarred armor a testament to the wars he's fought, the battles he's won. His eyes are hard as flint as he surveys his team, his voice a gravel-rough rumble over the din of preparation. "Listen up, Sigma," he barks, his voice cutting through the noise. "This mission is going to push us to our limits. We're hitting the Iridians where they live, striking at the heart of their command structure. They'll outnumber us, outgun us, but they won't outfight us. We're the best there is, and we will not fail." The soldiers still all eyes on their leader. They've followed him through hell before, and they'll follow him again. Vasquez, Randy's right hand, steps forward, his heavy brow furrowed. "What's the plan, Chief?" Randy activates a holoprojector on his gauntlet, the ghostly blue image of KX-4872 spinning slowly above his palm. "Stealth drop right to their doorstep," he says, jabbing a finger at a small clearing near a sprawling structure. "We hit the ground here, make our approach through the jungle. They'll never see us coming. Once we reach the command center, we rig it to blow sky high." Nods all around, grim smiles on battle-hardened faces, but Randy's not done. "There's a complication," he continues, his face hard. "Intel says the Iridians are holding a high-value prisoner, Dr. Elena Novak, one of our top xenobiologists. She was captured during a raid, and she has intel on the Iridians' bioweapons program that could turn the tide of this war. We're going to get her out." The weight of the mission settles on the soldiers' shoulders, but they bear it without complaint. They know the stakes, know the cost of failure. "Two objectives," Randy hammers home, his gaze piercing as he sweeps it over his team. "Destroy the command center and bring Dr. Novak home. Anything less is unacceptable. Am I clear?" "Sir, yes, sir." The soldiers bark as one, their voices a thunderous echo in the confines of the armory. The mission clock is ticking. The intercom crackles to life, the voice of the bridge crew distant and tinny. "Sigma team, report to drop pod bay 3. Departure in 10 minutes. "On our way," Randy responds, already moving. "Sigma, let's move. Gear up and get to the pods." The armory is a flurry of activity as the soldiers make final preparations, stowing gear and weapons with the smooth motions of long practice. Then they're filing out, a silent procession of ghosts in black armor, their footfalls a staccato beat against the deck plates. In the drop pod bay, the stealth pods await, sleek and lethal, their matte black hulls seeming to drink in the light. The soldiers strap in, each to their own pod, their faces masks of determination behind their visors. "Sigma, sound off." One by one, the soldiers report in, their voices steady, unwavering. They are ready, the best of the best. "All right," Randy says, his thumb hovering over the launch control. "Let's do this." He punches the button, and the world falls away with a roar. The pods hurtle through the void, streaking towards the unsuspecting planet below. Inside, the soldiers are still, their breathing slow and measured, their minds focused on the mission ahead. The pods hit the atmosphere like meteors, their hulls glowing white-hot as they slice through the air. Inside, the soldiers grit their teeth against the bone-rattling vibrations, their armor's inertial dampeners straining to compensate. Down and down they plummet, invisible to the Iridian sensors, ghosts in the night. The jungle rushes up to meet them, a sea of green, and then they're punching through the canopy in a cacophony of snapping branches and tearing leaves. The pods hit the ground with a teeth-jarring impact, throwing up geysers of dirt and pulped vegetation. For a moment, all is still, the jungle holding its breath. Then, with a hiss of pneumatics, the pod hatches blast open, and the soldiers of Sigma emerge, weapons at the ready, scanning the perimeter with practiced eyes. They've arrived, the first human boots on Iridian soil. The enemy's stronghold awaits, a brooding presence in the distance. The soldiers melt into the shadows of the jungle, moving with the silent grace of predators. The mission has begun, and failure is not an option, for they are Sigma, the best of the best, and they will not be stopped. The jungle closes behind them like a living thing, swallowing them whole, and the pods sit empty and silent, waiting for the soldiers' return, or to serve as their tombs. Randy and his squad race through the Iridian Command Center's twisting corridors, Dr. Novak in tow. The scientist stumbles, her legs weak from captivity. Randy catches her arm, hauling her upright. "Keep moving, Doc," he barks over the blaring alarms. "No time for a breather." Plasma bolts sizzle past as they round a corner, a pack of Iridian soldiers in hot pursuit. Randy whirls, firing from the hip, stitching a burst across the lead alien's chest. It crumples, acidic blood spraying. "This way," Randy shouts, consulting the schematic flickering on his HUD. He shepherds Novak and the others down a side passage, the walls trembling as distant explosions rock the complex. "Charges are going off," Corporal Xiang yells, slamming a fresh power cell into his rifle. "Vasquez and Martinez did it." "Then let's not waste their hard work." Randy shoulders through a set of blast doors, emerging into the sweltering heat of the jungle. The extraction point is 100 meters ahead, a narrow clearing ringed by towering hardwoods. But the space is far from empty. A phalanx of Iridian warriors stand between them and escape, energy blades crackling, plasma rifles leveled. "Shit," Randy spits, shoving Novak behind him. "Jean Kovac, get the doctor to the LZ. We'll hold them off." The two soldiers grab Novak and sprint for the tree line as plasma bolts scream through the air. Randy and the rest of the squad lay down a withering barrage of covering fire, phosphorescent lances of energy stitching through the Iridian ranks. "Come on, you scaly bastards," Randy roars, hosing the aliens with fire. "You want her, you go through us." The jungle erupts into a storm of energy beams, bullets, and razor-sharp chitin as the two forces clash. Iridians shriek and humans curse, the air choked with cordite and ozone. Randy pivots and fires, his rifle bucking like a wild beast. Iridians drop and thrash, but more rush to fill the gaps, heedless of losses, desperate to recapture their prize. A bolt wings Randy's helmet, half melting the alloy. He rips it off with a snarl, sweat and blood streaming down his face. "Chief," Xiang's shout echoes from the trees. "The package is secure. We're at the LZ." "Copy." Randy guns down a charging Iridian, kicks another in the throat. "Squad, fighting retreat, fall back by the numbers." Plasma scorches the air as the humans leapfrog back, laying down blistering fire and bounding to the next position. The jungle floor is littered with twitching Iridian corpses, the glassy craters of pulse rifle impacts pockmarking their carapaces. At last, Randy and his soldiers burst into the clearing. Zhang and Kovac crouch protectively over a cowering Dr. Novak. The thrum of anti-grav engines builds to a roar as a matte black Terran dropship descends from the clouds, chin cannons spitting armor-piercing death. "Go," Randy thunders, waving his squad into the waiting craft. Searing plasma bolts crackle past as the Iridians break from the tree line, a living tide of chitin and fury. Randy and Zhang lay down a final blistering barrage, then leap aboard as the ramp slams shut. The dropship claws for altitude, its hull pinging as alien rounds spangs from the armored plates. In the cargo bay, Randy slumps against the wall, his rifle clattering to the deck. Dr. Novak huddles nearby, her face pale but composed. "You okay, Doc?" Randy asks, digging a battered canteen from his webbing and offering it to her. She accepts it with a grateful nod, taking a long pull. "I am now, thanks to you and your team." Novak matches his fierce smile. "After what they did to me, to my research, I'm ready to take this fight to their doorstep." The dropship arrows through the sky, leaving the flaming ruins of the Iridian base behind. The soldiers of Sigma slump in their crash couches, battered and bloody, but alive. It's a victory, hard-won and costly, but the war is far from over. The Iridian ascendancy is still out there, vicious and implacable, bent on humanity's destruction. Randy closes his eyes, savoring the brief respite. There will be more battles to come, more impossible odds to defy. Heart pounding, chest heaving, Randy sprints through the labyrinthine corridors of the Iridian command center, Dr. Novak close on his heels. The staccato clatter of their boots on the metal deck plates echoes like gunshots in the confined space. Behind them, the enraged shrieks and chittering of pursuing Iridian warriors grows louder, closer. Rounding a corner, Randy spots the exit ahead, a rectangle of blinding sunlight at the end of the dark hallway. "Almost there, Doc," he shouts over his shoulder, putting on a final burst of speed, "just a little further." They burst out into the harsh glare of the alien sun, the humid jungle air slamming into them like a fist. Randy keys his comm, his words coming in ragged gasps. "Vasquez, Martinez, we're out. Blow the charges." A heartbeat of tense silence. Then a tremendous roar splits the air, the ground heaving and bucking beneath their feet. The command center implodes behind them, folding in on itself like a house of cards, vanishing in a billowing cloud of smoke and pulverized debris. Randy allows himself a fleeting moment of grim satisfaction, then spins to his team, his face tight. "Move out. Extraction point is 2 clicks north." They plunge into the dense undergrowth, the jungle closing around them like a living thing, their weapons held ready, senses straining. They all know the Iridians will be coming for them, that they're far from safe. A plasma bolt sizzles past Randy's ear with an angry hiss. He dives for cover, dragging Dr. Novak down with him behind the mossy bole of a fallen tree. "Contact! 9 o'clock!" All hell breaks loose, the jungle erupting into a cacophony of plasma fire and searing energy beams, trees splintering and foliage igniting. The Sigma soldiers return fire, their faces grim masks of concentration as they pour withering fire into the unseen enemy. It's a running battle, a desperate fighting retreat through the tangled green hell of the alien jungle. The Iridians harry them at every turn, pressing the attack, trying to cut them off. Vasquez takes a hit to the leg, stumbling with a curse. But Martinez is there, hauling the wounded man's arm over his shoulders, half carrying, half dragging him onward through the choking underbrush. Randy leads the way, his rifle spitting blue-white bolts of plasma into the foliage, buying them precious seconds. Dr. Novak stays close behind him, her face pale but determined, a white-knuckled grip on the pistol he'd pressed into her hands. They break through the tree line onto a wide grassy plain, and there, gleaming in the distance like a promise, is a Terran dropship, engines howling, ramp down, beckoning them to safety. Randy feels a wild surge of hope, a fierce, desperate joy. They're going to make it. Against all odds, they're going to... A plasma bolt catches Martinez high in the back. He goes down hard, sprawling in the dirt, his rifle flying from his hands. Vasquez stumbles, tries to lift him, to carry him, but the Iridians are on them, boiling out of the jungle in a chitinous tide, weapons spitting death. Randy pivots, tries to lay down covering fire to buy them time, but there are too many, far too many. They're being overrun. A bolt catches Vasquez square in the chest. His armor shatters like glass and he crumples, folding in on himself like a puppet with its strings cut. A red haze descends over Randy's vision, a primal howling fury. His rifle forgotten, he draws his combat knife and charges headlong at the Iridians, a wordless roar of challenge and rage ripping from his throat. He is a whirlwind of glittering steel, the blade flashing in his hand as he hacks and slashes, alien ichor splashing hot across his face and chest. He fights like a man possessed, like a berserker of old, all technique forgotten, just a pure, burning need to kill, to avenge. But there are too many, a seeming endless sea of them. For everyone he cuts down, 2 more take its place. Claws gouge his armor, scoring the ceramic plating. A plasma bolt burns through his side, the searing agony almost bringing him to his knees. But then, a sound, a deep, earth-shaking roar. He raises his head, squinting through the smoke and chaos, and there, looming over the battlefield like an avenging angel wrought in adamantium and bristling guns, is the Odysseus. The Dreadnought opens up with everything it has, macro cannons and plasma batteries and missile pods, raking the Iridian lines with a storm of destruction. Aliens vanish in actinic fireballs, are ripped to shreds by shrapnel, sent flying in pieces by the shockwaves. The dropship screams in, sets down hard, the ramp slamming down. Marines pour out, their rifles already roaring, rushing to form a perimeter around Randy and Dr. Novak. One of them kneels by Randy's side, his youthful face creased with concern behind his visor. Chief, can you hear me?" Randy nods, the motion sending stabbing pains through his skull. "My team," he croaks, his voice a ruined rasp. "Vasquez, Martinez." Grief hits Randy like a hammer blow, a yawning, empty ache in his chest, but he pushes it down, locks it away. Gritting his teeth, he forces himself to his feet, swaying but staying upright through sheer force of will. "Get Dr. Novak to safety," he says, his voice flat and cold. "I'll cover you." The Marine opens his mouth to argue, but something in Randy's eyes, in the set of his jaw, stops him. He just nods, tight and sharp, and turns to guide Dr. Novak towards the waiting dropship. Randy stoops, scoops up his fallen rifle, turns to face the oncoming horde, a lone figure in battered black armor standing against the tide. He knows this is the end, knows he won't be leaving this planet, not alive, but that's all right. He's ready. Ready to make his stand, to spend his life in the defense of others. He breathes deep, the coppery taste of blood sharp on his tongue. Centers himself, feels the weight of the rifle in his hands, the solid ground beneath his feet. And then, with a last defiant roar, he charges forward to meet the enemy, the muzzle of his rifle already blazing, spent shell casings tinkling to the bloody earth in his wake. He fights with every last scrap of skill and strength and fury left in him, a machine of battle, dealing death with every trigger pull, every thrust and strike of his blade. He fights for his fallen brothers, for the innocent woman now winging to safety at his back, for the billions of lives hanging in the balance. He fights until he can fight no more, until the darkness rises up to claim him with cold, gentle hands. He falls to his knees in the blood-churned mud, his rifle slipping from nerveless fingers, the light in his eyes dimming, fading. But as the shadows close in, as the last breath rattles in his chest, his lips curve in a small, satisfied smile, because he knows with a deep, unshakable certainty that he has done his duty, that his sacrifice, his life, has bought something precious. Darkness envelops Randy, a heavy shroud weighing down on his battered body and mind. He drifts in a haze of pain and confusion, his thoughts fragmented, elusive. Muffled sounds echo distantly, distorted as if heard through deep water. He tries to move, to cry out, but his muscles refuse to obey, his voice trapped in his throat. Panic surges through him, a primal, clawing terror. Is this what death feels like? The final fading moments before oblivion claims him. But no, surely death wouldn't hurt this much, every nerve alight with agony. With immense effort, Randy forces his eyes open, squinting against the harsh glare of white light. It stabs into his skull, redoubling the pounding in his head. Blinking tears from his eyes, his vision slowly swims into focus. He's lying in a bed, his body swathed in bandages, a web of tubes and wires snaking from his skin, tethering him to softly beeping machines. The acrid tang of antiseptic burns his nostrils. He tries to sit up, but a hand on his chest stops him, its pressure gentle but firm. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Randy turns his head. Admiral Jameson stands at his bedside, the commander's face carved with lines of concern and exhaustion. His uniform is rumpled, as if he slept in it. "Where?" Randy croaks, his voice a ragged whisper, his throat raw and parched. "You're on the Odysseus," the Admiral says softly, reaching for a cup of water on the bedside table. He guides the straw to Randy's cracked lips. We picked you up after the battle. You were in bad shape, half dead. But the docs worked their magic, patched you up. You're going to be okay, son." Randy sips the water, the cool liquid soothing his ravaged throat. He closes his eyes as memories flood back in jagged shards. The mission, the Iridian Command Center, the desperate running fight through the alien jungle, his team, his brothers, falling one by one. Vasquez, chest caved in by a plasma bolt. Martinez, back seared to the bone. A wave of grief crashes over him, a searing anguish that steals his breath. His hands clench into fists, ignoring the flare of pain from torn skin and shattered bones. His squad, the men he'd fought and bled beside for years, gone. Dead on a distant, uncaring world. "Dr. Novak," he forces out, his voice strained, choked with emotion. "Did she—" "She's safe," the Admiral assures him, a small smile softening his stern features. "Thanks to you and your team's sacrifice. She's been debriefed, and the intel she provided has been invaluable. We've already launched a series of strikes against the Iridians' biological weapons facilities. You did good, son, damned good." Randy nods, a sense of grim satisfaction warring with the yawning pit of loss in his chest. They completed the mission. Dr. Novak is safe. The Iridians' vile weapons program dealt a crippling blow, but the cost— God, the cost. "What now, sir?" Randy asks, his voice hollow, empty. What is a soldier without his squad, his purpose? Admiral Jameson leans forward, elbows on knees, his gaze intent and serious. "The war goes on, Chief. The Iridians are reeling from our counterattack, but they're far from beaten. We need every capable soldier on the front lines." He pauses, searching Randy's battered face. "But you've given enough, son. More than anyone could ask, you've earned your rest, a quiet life. No one would fault you for stepping away." Randy shakes his head, ignoring the spike of agony through his skull. "No, sir. Not while I still draw breath. I'll fight on for my fallen brothers. For every human those bastards have butchered, I won't stop until the Iridians are nothing but ashes and bitter memories." A glimmer of respect and perhaps sorrow kindles in the Admiral's eyes. "I understand, Chief, but you need to heal first. Take the time, get your strength back, then we'll talk about your next assignment." A sense of purpose, hard and sharp as a blade, pierces the fog of grief and pain. Randy nods, resolve settling over him like armor. He'll rest, he'll mend, and then he'll return to the fight, stronger and more determined than ever. For his squad, for humanity. He'll fight on until the Iridians are defeated or he draws his last breath in the trying. "Get some sleep, Crawford," Admiral Jameson says softly, standing to leave. "That's an order. The war will still be there when you wake up." "Yes, sir," Randy whispers, his eyes already sliding shut, his exhausted body dragging him back down into the welcoming darkness. But even as he slips into the merciful oblivion of sleep, he knows his war, his mission, is far from over. He'll return to the fight, to the blood and fire and fury. He'll have his vengeance, no matter the cost. For he is human, and he'll never stop fighting for his species, his home, not while a single Iridian draws breath. Even unto death he'll fight, for Vasquez, for Martinez, for all the fallen. Always. The months drag by, each day blurring into the next as Randy pushes his battered body to its limits and beyond. He runs until his lungs burn, lifts until his muscles scream, spars until his knuckles bleed, every aching rep and bruising blow fueled by the searing memory of his fallen comrades, by the white-hot need to make the Iridians pay. He sees their faces every time he closes his eyes, Vasquez, Martinez, the others. He hears their dying screams, smells the acrid stench of their blood. It drives him, haunts him, a constant throbbing ache that no amount of painkillers can numb. The docs marvel at his progress, at the speed of his recovery. They call it a miracle, but Randy knows better. It's rage that knits his bones, vengeance that stitches his flesh. He heals not because he wants to, but because he must, because he has a score to settle, a debt written in blood. Finally, after an eternity of sweat and agony, the day comes. Randy stands before the mirror in his quarters, barely recognizing the man who stares back. The scars have faded, but the eyes are different, harder, colder, a killer's eyes. He looks like what he is, a weapon honed to a razor's edge, ready to be unleashed. He dons his uniform, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar after so long. But as he fastens the final clasp, as he feels the weight of the captain's bars on his collar, a sense of rightness settles over him, a grim sense of purpose. He is whole again, ready to return to the fight. The walk to Admiral Jameson's office is a blur, Randy's mind already racing ahead, already hungry for the battle to come. The Admiral looks up as he enters, and for a moment a flicker of surprise crosses the old warrior's face, chased by a grim smile. "Chief Crawford, it's good to see you back on your feet." Randy snaps to attention, his heels clicking together. "Thank you, sir. I'm ready to get back in the fight." The Admiral nods, but there's a heaviness to the gesture, a weariness that belies his crisp uniform and ramrod posture. "I have no doubt, Chief, but the fight has changed." He taps a button on his desk, and a holographic star map flares to life, bathing the room in a ghostly blue glow. Randy leans forward, his eyes narrowing as he takes in the sprawling web of systems and hyperlanes. "The intel Dr. Novak provided has allowed us to strike at the heart of the Iridian war machine," the Admiral continues. "Their biological weapons facilities have been destroyed, their command structure thrown into chaos. They're on the run." Randy feels a flicker of satisfaction at that, a grim sense of justice, but it's tempered by a growing unease, a soldier's instinct warning of danger yet to come. "So what's the problem, sir?" The Admiral sighs, and for a moment he looks every one of his advancing years. "The problem, Chief, is that the Iridians are desperate, and desperate creatures are the most dangerous of all." He leans forward, his finger stabbing at a small, unremarkable system on the edge of the map. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Iridian High Command. They're planning a final all-out assault on Earth, a last, desperate gamble to crush humanity once and for all." Randy feels a chill run down his spine, a cold dread settling in his gut. "When?" "We don't know for sure, but we do know where they're gathering their forces." The Admiral zooms the map in, centering on a small red speck amid the sea of stars. "Here, a system on the edge of Iridian space. Remote, isolated, and heavily fortified. We believe they're massing their entire fleet there, preparing for the final push." Randy studies the map, his mind racing. The system looks unremarkable, just another mote of light in the vast expanse. But he knows appearances can be deceiving. If the Iridians have chosen this place to make their stand, it will be a fortress, a stronghold, bristling with enough firepower to make any assault a bloodbath. But what choice do they have? The stakes are too high, the threat too grave. If the Iridians reach Earth, it's all over. Centuries of struggle, of sacrifice, rendered meaningless in one final brutal assault. No, it cannot be allowed, will not be allowed, not while there is breath in his body and fire in his veins. "So we hit them there," he says, his voice hard as tempered steel. "Take out their fleet before they can launch their assault." The Admiral nods, but there's no triumph in the gesture, only grim resolve. "Exactly, but it won't be easy. The system is a fortress, defended by the most advanced weapons and ships the Iridians have. It will take a fleet to crack those defenses, and even then, the losses will be heavy." Randy sets his jaw, meeting the Admiral's gaze unflinchingly. "I understand, sir. But we have to try. We can't let them reach Earth." "Agreed, Chief, which is why I'm assigning you to the strike force. You'll be leading a team of our best soldiers, infiltrating the Iridian defenses and sabotaging their ships from within." The Admiral rises, circling the desk to clasp Randy's hand in a firm grip. "Immediately, Chief. Your team is waiting for you in the hangar bay. Godspeed and good hunting." "Thank you, sir. We won't let you down." Randy turns to leave, his mind already whirling with plans and contingencies, but the Admiral's voice stops him. "Chief, I know you want vengeance for your team, but remember, this is bigger than any one soldier, any one squad. The fate of our entire species hangs in the balance. Randy pauses, a muscle jumping in his jaw. For a moment, the faces of the fallen flash before his eyes, the aching void of their loss, a physical pain in his chest. But he pushes it down, locks it away. The Admiral is right. This is bigger than him, bigger than any one man's pain or loss. I understand, sir. I'll do whatever it takes to stop the Iridians, no matter the cost. With that, he turns and strides from the office, his footsteps ringing on the deck plates, purpose and resolve thrumming through his veins like a drumbeat. The hangar bay is a hive of activity, techs and pilots scurrying to and fro amid the sleek, deadly shapes of the strike craft. But Randy's eyes are drawn to a small knot of figures standing apart, their postures taut and alert even in repose. These are his people, his brothers and sisters in arms. Together they will take the fight to the enemy. Together they will end this, once and for all. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, they will not fail, cannot fail. For they are the last line, the final guard, the shield and sword of humanity. And they will not be broken. Thijs and Vielwimskoga, we skandama. If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, I liked the story, and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.